the main reason why we are unhappy in our life, no matter what situations, no matter where we are, we always feel not fully happy, not fully satisfied, always feel like something missing, always feel like something, always feel like if things were different, that's how we always feel, there's always something kind of not being fully satisfied, not being fully content with what we have or what we are, and where, always there's a sense of wanting and desiring and wishing something else or something more, and that is what makes our mind not so peaceful and not so happy and fully satisfied. And the reason why we have that is, because again, we have, due to the delusions, and as long as we're the delusions, that is how we are going to feel all the time, that is how we're going to feel all the time, as long as we're the delusions, And so therefore, only when we are able to overcome the delusion, then only then we can really feel sense of total peace, total satisfaction, total happy and joy and content, And we will continue to have those delusions as long as we have the fundamental ignorance, the very root of all the delusions. As long as that ignorance will continue, the delusion will continue to arise. Just as, as long as the root is not rotten and the trees of the plant or the tree or plant, if the root is strong and not rotten and in good cases, in conditions, as long as it receives the other cause and condition, it will continue to grow, even maybe some years, maybe because of something, some of the branch started to dry up, but as long as the root is strong, then the next year it will grow again when there's better rain, when it gets more water and so forth, and similarly, as long as that root, the fundamental ignorance is there, then it will continue to give rise. So therefore, in order to overcome the delusion permanently, not only temporarily, stopping from manifesting temporarily, but if you want to get rid of them completely from the very root of it, then we have to overcome the fundamental ignorance. And in order to overcome the fundamental ignorance, then we need to cultivate the wisdom that realizes the emptiness or ultimate reality that can act as the direct antidote that can counteract that fundamental ignorance. And in order to cultivate that wisdom realizing the emptiness or ultimate truth, then we need to practice, meditate. And in order to practice and meditate, we need to know how to practice, meditate, and understand basic what emptiness that practice is. So we need to have better understanding of the emptiness or the ultimate truth. And through that, we need to study, and sometimes even though we cannot understand fully, but listening and hearing again and again and again and again, and reflecting and contemplating and thinking about those again and again, will leave a strong imprint in our mind, and either later in this life, maybe we will have a better understanding and maybe realizations, if not this life, in the future life, because there's strong imprint. When someone explains emptiness, it will be much easier to have understanding of that. And in order to have a better understanding of that, then the lot of Indian masters, then there is that different point of view of selflessness or emptiness among some of the Buddhist school as well as non-Buddhist schools. And the reason why they refute each and have that kind of discussions is in order to have a more deeper understanding of the emptiness according to the Madhyamika point of view. So it's not just for the sake of discussions that they are doing that. We also, in our mind, we also have all this grasping, like some of the non-Buddhist school explain, which has been negating that that in our study of that in the Untitled Chapter 9, not only they believe, but also in our mind we have certain grasping of permanent self. We don't say with our mouth, because of our little bit of intellectual understanding, we say, oh, the self is changing, self is impermanent. But deep in terms of our innate grasping, there is a certain level of grasping of permanent self. So by negating those schools, we use that same reasoning and logic to negate our grasping of that, the grasping of that self to be permanent. And just as there is a negation of certain sense of the other schools of existence of self as a substantial and autonomous, again, not only is a refuting a school of thought, but again, within our mind, we have that kind of grasping. So sometimes, a lot of time, people think, oh, I'm not interested in why should I study negating another school of that? It seems like this is a business of intellectuals, and it sometimes it feels like it's why we need to study for those of us who are not in that kind of intellectuals. But actually, our mind, there is an innate grasping of those mind, and it has similar, the reason why we grasp is similar as they explain. And so when that is negated, then we use that in our meditation also to kind of negate that. And so that is important that we have to understand. Otherwise, we think we are wasting a time studying about all these different negations, and it feels like it is not important for we ordinary beings who are not interested in academically, but it's something they do with our grasping mind. And also when Prasangika kind of negate the Sotantrika, the schools, or many other Buddhist schools, the grasping of existing from its own side objectively. Not only they say that our mind, if you see, when we see any objects, there is appearance and there is grasping in our mind. Everything I see, everything I hear, everything I smell, everything, you know, I taste, everything I touch, there's a sense of everything that all this object existing from objectively from its own side or inherently, truly. Not only there's appearance, there's a grasping of that. And because of that, then many of the school believe that is how things exist. And so when the Prasangika negates such schools by many different reasons and logic, it is also, we use that same reason and logic to destroy our that grasping. So therefore, that kind of discussion, that kind of debate is not just with someone else. We use that same reasoning and logic that negate the other schools to negate our grasping. Because that grasping is the source of the problem, and that is the source root of the delusions. And I think when you don't understand it, then sometimes we feel, you know, why are we spending so much time on all this debate between the different school of thoughts? Because sometimes we don't see it is related to our grasping. We just think it is something to do with just a concept of someone in the school, you know. So again, I think I have kind of mentioned, I think at the very beginning of the chapter 9, and again, I'm just kind of repeating that because sometimes it seems a little bit kind of not so easy, and also I said at the very beginning, I wasn't even sure whether we would go each verses, and I did ask, and whether we should just kind of leave some part, but I think I was kind of asked and requested to go through all of that, so therefore we are going through all of that. I think if I remember correctly, I think we finished verse number 69, yeah? Does anyone remember? Page number 137. And we just finished, there is the number 3, a refutation of the self postulated by the Nikaya school. And I think we finished that one, which finished on 69, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're at 60.
We are 70. 60 or 70?
60, I think, Angela. You finished at 59, and we begin.
59? No, I think I've 60. 60. We already finished. I think we are on 70. Does anyone remember?
Oh, wait a minute.
Laura's trying to say something, but we can't hear her.
Okay. If in my cases, it seems like I finished verse number 69.
60.
Where,
yeah,
I think that's
it is
right.
70, Geshe.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Yeah, so I think I finished 69 and now we are on 70. Yeah. So again, is refuting one of the schools that I think there is in chat, yeah, 70. Okay, thank you. Where they believe, you know, there is a self which is permanent and partless, And and so that has been refuted. And so then is verse number 70, where the question comes. So then again they say, if the self were not permanent, so from Buddhist school of thought, and especially Madhyamika, because such the concept of self being permanently refuted, and therefore it is presented as impermanent. So then the question comes back to the Buddhists, where it says, if the self were not permanent, if it's impermanent, then the relation between the actions and its effect, the karma, the door of the actions, coming to experience the result of action committed would not be maintained. So basically it is saying, it is, if you don't have permanent self, then, then there wouldn't be karma. Someone experiencing karmic result of action they have created, so this is so because the door, the person who is creating, or the sentient being or person who is creating the karma, the door would perish as soon as the actions is committed. So because it is impermanent, every moment is changing. The self is, every moment, self is changing. The first moment of self, when the actions are created, that cease, and then next moment. So that is where the argument comes. So therefore that will perish as soon as the action is committed, and would not exist when the time comes to experience the effect of such actions. Therefore, whose action would be to experience? So that is the, and it makes a point, and that is why they accept. That is why they accept permanent self, because for them, if there is no permanent self, if it's impermanent, then in this life we create a certain karma actions, we engage certain actions, karma, and the imprint is left. And then in next, either in the future, in this life, or in the next life, that person is a different person, because that self is different, and is a different person. So therefore, how can an action created by someone be experienced by another person? If it's impermanent, they are not same persons. So yeah, so that is the argument. And for that reason, then they believe there is a permanent self, and it is same, and therefore they wouldn't, that in their cases, then they think they would not have that problems. The answer, the basis for the causal actions, the aggregate of this life, for example, and the basis for ripening of the effect, the aggregate of future life, are distinct state of being. Yes, they are distinct and different. For example, we create certain karma in this life, and as a result, we might be born in one of the lower realms or one of the higher rebirth in next life, and that person's or that sentient beings is a distinct or separate from this, is not the same. So definitely it is not the same. So it's a distinction. And since in both this state it is established, both for you because we accept permanent self, and for us because we accept identitylessness, that the self neither commit the action nor experience the effect, is it not meaningless to argue on this point? So here is saying, from ultimate point of view, there is no self, and there is no action to be created from ultimate of self, and there's no result to be experienced, when you analyze on deeper level and from that kind of ultimate point of view. And whereas you believe there is a permanent self which is ultimate, and you believe there is a also inherently existing actions and that, and then so then here is saying it doesn't, it seems like there is no point of discussing it because we are totally in a different directions in that way, one way of looking at that, So from ultimate point of view. From conventional point of view, I think maybe it might come the next. Yeah, I think it comes later. But I can. But from conventional point of view, when you don't analyze with such a critical analysis, ultimate analysis, then there is a self which is impermanent, that is changing from moment to moment, and therefore, they are distinct. Each moment is a distinct persons or sentient beings, and definitely the persons of this life and future life are distinct. But because they have the same continuity of the same consciousness that carry the karmic imprint, and therefore, in a worldly way, we can say it is the same persons because of the same continuity of the same consciousness. Even it's not so. Even we don't talk about this life and future life. For example, even in this life, what I did yesterday, the person of yesterday, me, has ceased, and today is a new me. Okay, yesterday Geshe has perished and ceased, and today Geshe is kind of like the new, and there. So in that way, they are different, distinct. But because it is the same continuity, whether it is my physical body, whether it is my mental emotions, mind, my aggregate has same continuity, even though it has changed and different. But because since it's same continuity, therefore we can say ordinarily in worldly world, that is same person because of the same continuity, and therefore if I eat something yesterday bad, and because of it today I'm having some stomach problems, so therefore because of my actions of yesterday I'm experiencing the result of that. We said that, and so in that way definitely it is there. So that is where it is. And then next one, objection. What about actions whose fruit will be experienced in this life? They do not have different basis aggregate upon which causal action committed and results experience. Action which experience this life, and again it is same. I just give the example of a student today. So ultimately, there is, from ultimate point of view, there is no yesterday, there is no today, there is no self of yesterday, there is no self of today, there is no action created yesterday, there is no result experienced today. But on conventional level, on relative level, there is yesterday Geshe Sherab, and there is today's Geshe Sherab, and they are different in the sense they have changed. My physical aggregate has changed. My mental aggregate has changed. So it is not exactly same. It's a different, but and I experience today the consequences of yesterday my actions. And because in all from the conventional world point of view, we can say that and it is correct from the conventional point of view, even though it is not exactly same person as today and today, but because it's the same continuity of the aggregate. So therefore we can say that, So therefore is the answer. Nevertheless, in the same moment, it is impossible to see aggregate of someone committing causal action being subject to the experience of its result, just as the father and the son cannot be born at the same time. So of course, the father and the son cannot be born at the same time. So the cause and result cannot be experienced at the same time. First, the cause is created, and then result is experienced later. But if the cause and conditions are inherently independently existent, then it would be possible for them to experience simultaneously at the same time. So objection. However, it says in one scripture, so it says in some of the sutra, how will someone else experience the result of action committed? Or monk, action you committed and accumulated will not ripen on such thing as external earth element, but upon your future aggregates grasped by the consciousness. Thus, does not your assertions, the Buddhists, contradict that statement of the Buddha, that the door of the action must be experienced its result himself? And so the answer here comes, which I already mentioned before. This statement is to be interpreted as follows. While actually considering the same continuity. So it is not same person, but it's same continuity. Okay? It's not the exact same persons, but it's the same continuity. The aggregate is same, especially the consciousness that carry the karmic imprint. It's the same continuity. So that is why of the individual, the Buddha taught the door of the actions is experienced by the result, by that person's, even though that person is not same, exactly same, because they have changed. Their aggregate has changed, but because it's the same continuity, therefore Buddha said that that actions is result of that actions experienced by that person's. And in order to prevent people denying the law of karmic cause and effect, actually this is not so, because permanent self is non-existent. So from Buddhist point of view, saying there is no permanent self, as you explained, but even though there is no permanent self, but still we wouldn't have a problem of not the action created by someone not experience the result by themselves in the futures, because it's the same continuity. And so therefore, and if we use example of present in this life, it is easier for us to see. Yeah, like for example, when you were very young, we have done certain things, and we might be experiencing some of the result of that now. Yeah, some of the consequences of some of the action that we did when we were young, we might be experiencing now. Maybe when we were young, maybe we abused our body with a substance, and now maybe you have some health issues, or maybe when you are young, because you are exposed to certain things, or we did certain things emotionally, we are exposed in certain environment, and now as we grow up, we are experiencing the consequences of such emotions and so forth. But the person who we were very young and now is not the same. In a sense, we have changed so much, isn't it? So therefore, we have changed so much, physically, mentally, emotionally. We have changed so much. So in that sense, we are not exactly same. It's not the same person, exactly the same person. If it's exactly the same, it's permanent and exactly the same, then there shouldn't be any changes in terms of our aggregate, physical aggregate, mental aggregates. But our direct experience shows we have changed physically, emotionally, and mentally. So therefore, we are not exactly the same. But in our conventional worldly world, we would say it is the same person, isn't it? And there is nothing wrong with saying that on conventional world, on relative world, in our worldly world, to say it's the same person because it is the same continuity of the same aggregates. It's the same continuity of our body, it's the same continuity of our emotion, it's the same continuity of our mind. And so therefore we say, I'm experiencing the consequences of what I did when I was young. And so if we understand that, then we can take that same understanding from one life to another life. So even though this self or person and the self and person in the future life is not exact, is not the same, it has changed so much because of impermanent, but still we can say it's experience, the actions is experienced, the result of the actions are experienced by the same person conventionally, because in a way, because on the basis that it is the same continuity of the mind carrying that karmic seed. And so I think, yeah. Why is there no permanent self? Okay, so again, even though there has been a lot of refuted with earlier, many with many verses, Shantideva, with the reasoning and logic, try to prove why there's no permanent self. And again, it continued to kind of, so then again, another reasoning logic is that, neither the mind of the past nor the mind of the future are the self, because they are non-existent. Because one has ceased, the past has ceased, past is no more, is ceased. And the present, the other, the future, has not yet been produced. So therefore, one is already gone, one is to yet to come, and so therefore they do not exist now. At, then the cautions, at isn't the mind of the present moment which has been produced, but has not been seized the self. So then the questions come. Yes, I can understand the past is no more there, future is yet to come. So you can't say past mind is the self, the future mind is self. But what about the present mind which is there? The present moment of the mind which is there, why can't be that be self? So among the very different schools, whether it's between the Buddhist schools, between the non-Buddhist and Buddhist schools, or even within the different Buddhist schools, especially those, all of them, except for the Prasanga, where they believe there is inherently existing self, where there is a belief of the inherently existing self. So therefore, they all believe, because of that inherently existing self, when you try to analyze and try to find where is the self within the aggregates, most of them seems to say the self exists within the consciousness, because it is the consciousness that go through from one life to another life. The physical aggregate, it ceases when we die. It doesn't continue in the next life, the physical aggregates. And even the gross mind, such as feelings, gross feeling, discriminating mind, compositional factors, and gross consciousness, they all cease. But the subtle mind is the one that continue from one life to another life. And because that is why is continue one to one, and so with stable, so then they said that is the self. So that is where a lot of them, when we analyze and think, oh, the self is within the consciousness. And so then when you say it is in the consciousness, then again, if we analyze deeply, when you talk of consciousness, then it is a continuity. And because it is continuity, it's made of past, present, and past moment of consciousness, present moment of consciousness, future moment of consciousness. And so then that is where it is coming. So then, and so here, the Prasangika is saying, Chandra was saying, the past consciousness, when we do in that container, we kind of, the past consciousness is not the self, the future is not the self, past is ceased, future is added. And then what about present? And then even the present moment of consciousness can't be the self. You cannot find the self within, but even the present consciousness, even the present moment of consciousness is still continuity. Again, it is a continuity. And since it's a continuity, even that has many moments. Even that has many moments. And the moment you point out this is the self, that very moment is gone. So you cannot really pinpoint and say this is it. Because even the present moment of consciousness is made of many continuities of that consciousness. So therefore, because it's made of many continuity consciousness, so the moment you pinpoint and say this is the one, that very moment is gone. That very moment is gone, no more there. So therefore, you cannot really kind of pinpoint within each moment or present moment to say this is the self. So then there is nothing to kind of hold and grasp on within each moment of consciousness to say this is the self. So therefore, that is where the answers comes. If this were the case, then in the next moment when it has perished, it will no longer be the self. So that, the moment you pinpoint in one moment of that present moment of the consciousness, the moment you pinpoint that very moment is gone. That very moment, the self gone. So then, does that mean there is no self? Because that moment of consciousness is no more there. And so that is where, with this reasoning, all five aggregates are rejected as being self. Okay? So as I mentioned, all the 5 aggregates, each of those aggregates not being able to withstand the ultimate analysis, them being as the self, you know. I think other aggregate is more easier to negate, you know. When we die, our body cease, you know, it doesn't continue. And even with others mental factors, you know, gross mental factors, they all cease. Only that continued is the more subtle mind. And that is the consciousness, more subtle mind. And that is where a lot of other schools try to hold on that more subtle consciousness as being the where you are able to find the self there, and that is the way that it continue, the self continue. But even with that, when you do that kind of ultimate analysis, because that consciousness is also made of many moments, and if you analyze within each of the moment that make that consciousness, then again, you cannot find. And so, for example, when the trunk of plant and tree is split into the part, there's no essence found at all, you know. So when you cut and each part, you cannot find anything essence meaningful in that. Likewise, when analytically search with a reasoning, you know, with the ultimate analysis, when you go deeper analyze, not just conventional analysis. There could be 2 kinds of analysis: conventional analysis and ultimate analysis. Okay. For example, conventional analysis would be, is this a book or not? Okay. This will be our worldly conventional analysis. Is this book or not? Is this a nice book or not? Okay. Is this a Dharma book or not? And those are, so this kind of analysis is done on the basis that we have already kind of accepted and believe there's inherently existing book, a book from its own objective side. On the basis of that, then we think is whether this book is good or not, whether this has this functioning or not, this and all of that. So ultimate analysis is, even before we talk about whether this is a book or not, or whether this is a good book or not, or whether it's a Buddhist book or not, and this, what is book itself? What is book itself? What do you mean by book? What is itself? So even that, so that is ultimate analysis, going more deeper. Before even we say whether it's book or not, to decide what is book, what does book means, what is the book? So, and so that kind of analysis is what we call the ultimate analysis. And so when through that kind of ultimate analysis, search for, with such a reasoning and logic, a truly existing self cannot be found among aggregates, And so therefore, if something is truly existence, if the self is truly existence, then it is possible to be possible to have permanent self. Okay, but since it's not truly existence, and so therefore, so it's not truly. So since that cannot withstand or cannot be found, the self cannot be found within the each of aggregates, 5 aggregates, or the collection to aggregate itself, or continuity of the aggregate itself, when analyzes deeply with that kind of analytical, conventional not conventional, sorry, ultimate analysis, when it cannot be found, what it shows is then, since it cannot be found by ultimate analysis, therefore it becomes clear that does not exist ultimately. If something exists ultimately, it should be found when we do with ultimate analysis, it should be able to find it. But since when we do that kind of ultimate analysis, we are unable to find, that means that it does not exist ultimately. And not existing ultimately has equal meaning of not existing, truly existing, not existing inherently. They all have same meanings here. But something, because it does not ultimately, doesn't mean it does not exist. Because it can be found by conventional analysis or relative analysis, by conventional valid cognizers. And so therefore, it exists, but the way it exists is conventionally, relatively. So that is one of the things that we have to, when we study about emptiness, a lot of things that get confused by many schools of thought, many other schools, as well as we ourselves, not being able to differentiate existing and truly existence, non-existent, not truly existence. If we get confused, those are same, then that is where the problem comes. Okay, something existent, truly existent are not same, but it's very difficult for our mind to distinguish these two. What really exists and what truly existing means. It's very difficult for our mind, ordinary mind, to be able to distinguish. And so therefore, for us, you know, it appears almost like same. When there's appearance of something existing, then to us it appears existing as truly existence. And when we negate something as truly existent, then it feels like we are negating non-existence of that. And even though there is a difference. And so I think, yeah, I think that's, so again, as I mentioned, it is not only the view of the schools that get confused, but even in our mind, that is where we always get confused. Our mind, when I say table, exists. To me, I couldn't differentiate the table existing and table truly existing. You know, to my mind, it's just same. And that is where we have problem. When someone says this table does not exist truly, but it exists, then we cannot, because we are unable to, our mind is unable to differentiate these two things. And that is the way the problem comes, you know, even though there is a difference. And that is the difficult point in understanding the emptiness, you know, because when we accept and when we believe something exists, not only there is a acceptance and believing is something existing, but then at the same time there is a belief and acceptance of truly existence, you know. And when that is truly existence has been negated with the reasoning and logic, with the ultimate analysis, then we feel like, then if we cannot find with that kind of analysis, then we feel like then that thing doesn't exist. And so even though it's negating inherently existing self and not negating the self, but to us, it's difficult to differentiate these two. And that is why understanding emptiness become more difficult, because of that, not being able to distinguish that clearly between existent and truly existent, and non-existent and non-truly existence, you know, or negating yeah. Okay, we will have a short 10-minute break, and if you have any questions, please feel comfortable to ask by chatting or by unmuting yourself and let us, okay? So there's one caution. We exist conventionally or relatively, but we do not exist ultimately or absolutely or truly or independently, inherently. So in Prasangika point of view, they all have same meaning. Truly existing, inherently existence, absolutely existing, ultimately existence, independently existence, they all have same meanings. So that is, I think, that is correct, as you said. So others, I think there is no caution, just a comment. And yes, definitely. Yeah, I mean, even myself, even though I've studied many years, even after many years, at the very beginning, when I go to many of the Dalai Lama's teaching, especially when he teaches on emptiness, on that, I find it, not only me, most of the monks, even we find it difficult to understand all of them. But as we continue to study and as we continue to listen and hear more, now I think maybe in terms of intellectual understanding, when you give teachings, I can understand most of that, even at least on intellectual level, even though still on experiential level, then of course, much more meditation and practice is needed. So then, where was that? Yeah. Then 75. If there were no sentient beings, toward whom would compassion be developed? Again, this kind of question, you can see this kind of question arises again and again from the other school of thought, and also in our mind. Again, because again, not being able to differentiate non-existent and non-truly existence or absolute existence. Because here the author negates truly existing self, truly existing sentient beings, and truly existing any phenomena. So then because they say there's no truly existing, then they think there is no existing at all. And so then that is where the question comes. If there's no, because if there's no inherently or ultimately existing self, then there wouldn't be a truly or inherently existing sentient beings. And if there is no truly or inherently being sentient beings, then how can there be a compassion? Because there wouldn't be a object of compassion. That is where the misunderstanding comes. There is no truly or inherently existing sentient beings, but there is a sentient beings. And that is where because when you say there is no inherently or truly existing sentient beings, then they think there is no sentient beings. And then on the basis of that misunderstanding, then this question arises. If there's no sentient beings, then where is the object of compassion? And if there's no object of compassion, who are sentient beings who are suffering, then there's no need to develop a compassion. So that is the way the question comes. And because of due to that misunderstanding. And the answer, although sentient beings do not truly exist, that is what it is, you know. Sentient beings does not exist truly or inherently or ultimately, but deceptively, one should develop compassion. Deceptively or unconventionally or relatively, they all have same meaning, you know. For those imputed as sentient beings by the confused mind, which has promised to practice the Bodhisattva way of life in order to lead them to the goal of liberations. So here is saying, you know, even though there is no truly existing sentient beings, but there is sentient beings on conventional level, on ultimate or relative level. And since there is a sentient beings on conventional or relative level that is experiencing suffering, therefore one should cultivate the compassions towards such conventionally existing sentient beings in order to practice on the Bodhisattva's way of life, so that in order to liberate them from all the suffering and cause of suffering, from the samsara, and in order to guide and lead them to the fully enlightenment. And so therefore, here the author is saying there wouldn't be a contradictions. There shouldn't be a contradictions. There wouldn't be a contradictions. Not non-existent or truly existing sentient beings. At the same time, there is an object of compassion, sentient beings, and therefore you should develop compassions. And so, yeah, so therefore one should develop compassions. And so therefore that. Then again, another question comes due to the same kind of misunderstanding. If sentient beings do not exist, again, same thing. The author is not saying sentient beings do not exist. He's saying it do not exist, truly existence. But again, for the lot of others, because they cannot distinguish between non-truly existence and non-existence. And that is the way the problem comes. And not only they have, we also have same. On intellectual, maybe we can make distinguishing, isn't it? When we talk, we can able to, on intellectual level, we are able to make distinguish truly existing and existence, non-truly existent, non-existent. But in our innate mind, again, when you see things, again, we are very difficult to make that distinguish in our mind, and we have the same problem in terms of that, you know. As sentient beings do not exist, who will attain the result of developing compassion, you know. So therefore, the reason to cultivate the compassions, who is cultivating the compassion is the sentient beings. The reason the sentient beings try to cultivate compassion, Bodhisattva mind, and engage in the practice of 6 perfections, so that they can achieve the fully enlightenment, so they can be most benefit to all sentient beings. And here is, if there is no sentient beings, then there wouldn't be a sentient beings who engage in the practice of the compassion, bodhicitta, 6 perfections, and therefore there wouldn't be sentient beings who can achieve the result, the fully enlightenment, the development of compassion, the result of developing compassion, the fully enlightenment, you know. And so that question arises, and as although ultimately it's true that there is no truly existing sentient beings, and since there is no truly existing sentient beings, also there is no truly existing compassions. Also, there is no truly existing result of the compassions. But deceptively, or relatively or conventionally, whatever different terms that we use, from the point of view of the mind confused about phenomena, So here the confused mind doesn't necessarily, again, sometimes we use the same term, but it has a different meanings. Sometimes the confused mind can mean to the ignorance. But here, it doesn't mean that the ignorance mind. Here it is meaning to the conventional, the conventional valid cognizers, which cognize the conventional phenomena, And so the view of mind confused about phenomena, we accept existence, merely apparent result, arise from merely apparent compassion, develop towards merely apparent sentient beings. So basically it is saying, even though there is no truly existing object of compassion, sentient beings ultimately exist or truly existing, and neither there is truly existence of compassion, and there is neither result of truly existence result of compassion, but there is illusion-like, apparently or illusion-like sentient beings. On the basis of illusion-like sentient beings, the object of compassion, then one can develop illusion-like compassion. Due to having developed like illusion-like compassion, then one can develop the result of illusion-like result of that compassion. So the illusions, the illusions is an example of no truly existence, There is the way whatever object appear in that illusions, there is no really thing as such there. Similarly, even the sentient beings, they appear to our mind as truly existence, but in reality, there is no sentient beings that exist truly the way it appeared to us, and therefore they are like illusions. And not only the sentient beings, even the compassion itself, the compassion to us, it appears as truly existing, but in reality, that is not how the compassion exists. In reality, compassion do not exist truly, but it exists only on conventional level, merely imputed by the mind on the basis. And same with the result. So that is where so that is where, even though nothing exists truly, but everything exists. All the phenomena exist like an illusion, like a dream state. So therefore, again, Again, objection. Since compassion, both subjective state to which things appear in false way, and the mind confused about phenomena, surely is equally fit to be rejected as is confusion about the self. So again, to the compassion, because again, compassion is subjective mind, so it has object because it is subject. So when the object of the compassion appear to the compassion, there is appearance of truly existence. In that way, then there is appearance of false appearance to the subjective mind compassions. In that way, then you can say it is a while there is a appearance of that, but there is no grasping of that. The compassion does not grasp the way it appears to its mind. So therefore, it is not same like mistaken or confusion mind, like ignorance. To our ignorant mind, there is appearance of truly existing object, and not only there is appearance of truly existing object, but we cling and grasp the way as it appears to us. And so therefore, it is totally mistaken, confused mind. But in compassion, there is an appearance of that, the false appearance, but then there is no grasping of that, So it is not same in that way, And so therefore, it is not same as a confusion about the self. That is the fundamental ignorance, self-grasping. But here, the others get confused, Definitely there is appearance, the false appearance of truly existence to the both ignorance and to the compassions, their object. Do you get it? In terms of the appearance of the object to the subject mind, there is same kind of appearance, the appearance of object as truly existent, whether it is the ignorance or whether it is compassion. But even though there's appearance, but in terms of grasping, there is a difference. The ignorance grabs as it appears to is, as truly existence, the self and other phenomena. Whereas the compassion, even though there's appearance, there's no grasping of truly existing objects. And therefore, they are different. For the someone who is asking the questions, they can't see because they see it's the same appearance, so they think they are same. They both are same confused mind, so therefore, just as the ignorance should be rejected or should be eliminated, same way compassion should be also eliminated because they think both are same confused mind. But it is not same. There is appearance, they have both same appearance, but they have no same grasping or apprehending. And so therefore, the ignorance should be rejected, whereas compassion should be cultivated and developed, not rejected. Okay? In order to completely pacify suffering, one need not and cannot reject compassion. So that is what it is. Because compassion is not the same way of confused mind or mistaken mind as it is the fundamental ignorance, you know. And because, you know, in order to pacify all the suffering of oneself and all sentient beings, we need to achieve fully enlightenment. Without achieving fully enlightenment, we will not be able to overcome or pacify all the suffering of oneself and others. And in order to achieve that fully enlightenment, then we need to engage into the practice of such as the Bodhisattva practice, such as six perfections. And in order to engage in the Bodhisattva practice, such as six perfection, we need to cultivate the Bodhisattva mind, and in order to develop Bodhisattva mind, we need to develop compassion. So therefore, compassion is not something to be rejected or abandoned. It is something to cultivate it. And not only something to cultivate it, is a must for that, you know. Therefore, one should not reject this merely apparent confusions about the result, you know. So therefore, yeah, maybe I think maybe I don't know. Sometimes too much informations make things more confusions, and sometimes.
Geshe la?
Yeah. Please, yeah.
I'm having a hard time concentrating on this, but I'm extra confused about what you were saying about how ignorance is. You were comparing ignorance and compassion, and I couldn't really understand what the point. I couldn't really understand the difference between how you were saying ignorance is, I mean, I guess you were saying ignorance is empty of inherent existence and compassion is empty of inherent existence, but we should cultivate compassion because why compared to ignorance? I mean, logically I understand, but I don't understand what you were saying.
Well, first we have to understand the other who were confused, because the cautions is the one which is asked by the others, and the answer is what is given by the authors or the Madhyamikas. So the others, you know, there's a misunderstanding, thinking both compassion and fundamental ignorance, and they both are confused mind, okay? And the reason why they think they both are confused mind is because there is a appearance of object to both mind, whether ignorance and compassion, as the object existing a truly existence. Do you get it?
Yeah, I get that part.
So
yep.
Yeah, first you get that, like for our mind, our eye consciousness, when I see the cup, there is appearance of truly existing cup. I remember cup in my mind, in mental state, not sense consciousness, because I have memory of cup. Even that, there is a appearance of that memory of cup as truly existence. While there is appearance that truly existence, that doesn't mean all my mind grasps as truly existence. My eye consciousness does not grasp the cup to truly existence. There's appearance, but the mind, the eye sense consciousness does not grasp, because the eye consciousness is just like a mirror where the objects reflect. but it doesn't, the mirror doesn't say this is black, white, or this is good or bad. It just reflects. So objects reflect to our senses, and then next our concept mind, the mental consciousness, then say, oh, this is cup, and this is bad, this is good, this is nice, this I need. So that sense consciousness, the objects reflect that, appear to that, but it doesn't grasp that way. And so therefore, similarly, also to our ignorance, our compassion, our bodhisattva mind, to all our mind, there's an appearance of whatever object is appearing to that object. In compassion, bodhisattva, there's appearance of sentient beings. There's appearance of sentient beings inherent in existence. And definitely also to the ignorance. But the difference is the ignorance grasps to the objects as truly existing, as it appears to that mind. Whereas compassion does not grasp as truly existence sentient beings, even though there is appearance of sentient beings inherently existing, but it does not grasp. That is the compassion doesn't grasp the sentient beings to be inherently existence. And so therefore, even though there is same appearance, but there's a different grasping, or maybe there is a different, maybe the grasping is not the right word. In Tibetan is zimba, apprehending, you know, even though there is a same appearance, but they don't apprehend same way. And so therefore, the ignorance is totally, you know, totally mistaken mind. Since that ignorance is totally mistaken mind, that should be rejected. Whereas compassion is not a mistaken mind, even though there is appearance of that, but in terms of its apprehending the object, there is no mistake in apprehending the object, because it doesn't apprehend truly existence. It only apprehends the suffering sentient beings. And so therefore, that compassion is not only not to be rejected, but to cultivate it, because that compassion lead us to have bodhisattva, and that bodhisattva lead us to practice the bodhisattva path, and that by engaging bodhisattva path, then that lead to the achieve fully enlightenment, and by achieving enlightenment, then we can pacify our own suffering and other sentient beings' sufferings.
That really was very helpful. Thank you, Geshe. I think using apprehending made a huge difference, and to the way you explained from the beginning, again, about the ignorance. I mean, yeah, it absolutely makes a lot more sense this time around. Thank you.
Okay, good. I'm happy when those things happen.
Me too.
when we don't get stuck there and it started to, okay. Then 77. However, the confusions about the self should be rejected because it increases such thing as self-important, which are cause for suffering. And so, as I mentioned, you know, that the confusion about the self is that fundamental ignorance. And that fundamental ignorance should be rejected and abandoned. Why? Because if we have that kind of that kind of ignorance that grasps truly existing self, then that lead to, you know, self-grasping of self-importance, and due to that self-grasping and self-importance, then that give rise to many other delusions, attachments, pride, you know, anger, hatred, jealousy, and so forth. And the moment we have those state of minds, that very moment our mind, there is a suffering, because it disturb our mind, disturb our peaceful mind. That very moment it disturbs our mind. Whatever peace, tranquility we have is taken away. And not only that, due to those negative emotions, then we create more negative karma. And by having created more negative karma, then again we experience more suffering in the futures. And so therefore, that kind of confused mind of the self, that is the fundamental ignorance, should be abandoned, rejected or abandoned, eliminated fully. On the other hand, the compassion must be developed because it leads to happiness. It leads to happiness of yourself and others. So, so here is saying, there are no means to reject these confusions. So again saying, but how can we overcome that fundamental ignorance, that confusions, Or is it possible to overcome that? Is it possible? And again, this is not only, again, you see all this discussion here is the caution is put by from another school of point of view, but we all have that cautions. Don't we feel, can we really overcome the delusions permanently? Can we really overcome the fundamental ignorance permanently? We also have that kind of doubt very often. Sometimes, we think delusion can be reduced, but can it really overcome? Definitely, delusion can be reduced. We can see with our experience, sometimes we are angry, upset, and we try to meditate, reflect, whatever different meditation we use, whether we use a mindfulness meditations, whether we use analytical meditations, sometimes through that kind of meditations, or sometimes we use some kind of tantric meditation, visualizations, recitations. Through that, we can see our delusion being reduced and weakened to some level. And through that, with our own experience, we know that some of those delusion can be kind of reduced, minimized, reduce the intensity, reduce the durations of, instead of having for long time, short time, and so on. But still, again, another cause and condition arises, again, delusion arises. And that keep on happening again and again. And sometimes we wonder, can we really overcome the delusion permanently, isn't it? So again, as I mentioned, each of those cautions is not cautions of another school. All of that, it is within our mind. We wonder that. We sometimes wonder whether those delusions can be really overcome, can be really eliminated. And so that is cautions. And then the answer, there are, so those kind of, this confusion, the fundamental ignorance, can be rejected or overcome or eliminated, because the supreme remedy for its meditations about identitylessness or emptiness, So here, the author is saying, yes, absolutely, those delusions can be overcome permanently. Why? Because the very root of those delusions can be overcome. And what is the root of those delusions? Is that fundamental ignorance. And how can fundamental ignorance be overcome? Because that fundamental ignorance is totally mistaken mind. Since it's totally mistaken mind, which does not have support of the truth, so the basis for that fundamental ignorance is very unstable, no matter how strong it feels like at the moment. On the other hand, the wisdom realizing the emptiness or selflessness is based on truth, on reality. And that wisdom that realizes the emptiness or selflessness is the supreme antidote that can overcome and eliminate that fundamental ignorance. And even that wisdom might feel very weak at the moment and not so strong at the moment because we don't have strong practice and familiarity with that. Even though it might feel weak, but since it has the support of the, because it's based on reality, truth, so therefore at the end, it will always overcome that. And so through, again, with our own experience, we can know, two contradiction mind, for example, the mind which thinks this cup is beautiful, and the mind which thinks this cup is absolutely horrible, ugly. Those two minds are contradictions. And you cannot have both minds together simultaneously. The mind which thinks this cup is beautiful, extremely beautiful, and the mind which thinks this cup is horrible. We cannot have that both minds simultaneously at the same time. And because they are contradictory mind, when there is an increase of the mind which sees this as beautiful, the mind which sees as a horrible get reduced. And the more and more I feel this is more and more beautiful, the mind which sees that as a non-beautiful, ugly, become less and less and less, and then eventually, totally, I don't think it is a horrible at all. I think everything's just the whole cup, everything is so beautiful and everything that. The same thing, the ignorance that apprehend or grasp object as truly existence, and the wisdom that relies the object not truly existent, they are totally contradictory. One see and apprehend truly existence, and one see and apprehend and realize non-truly existence. So when we develop that wisdom of understanding not truly existence of the self, of phenomena, and through practice and familiarity, as we practice, that becomes stronger and stronger. And as that becomes more stronger and stronger, then the others become less and less, because they contradict each other. And slowly, slowly, then one will be able to overcome totally. And from that point of view, that is why, again, the delusion, the fundamental ignorance can be overcome. Through that, the delusion can be overcome, because there is an antidote to that. Because there is an antidote that can counteract that fundamental ignorance. And because of that, then the delusion can be overcome. And so that is the so I guess probably I think maybe it is good to kind of leave here today. I think, yeah. So then, yeah, we can, unless someone has questions or comments, we can have one or two questions or comments? Otherwise, we can just, yeah, stop here.